Descending again by a dozen rickety, disused steps, they reached a darker covered teamway and hurried along to the docks. Just short of the end of the open dockhouses, where a string of arc lamps threw their white and flickering light upon the huge black side of a moored steamer, Randland turned into a little shade, and the two came suddenly upon Customs Officer Dickey. "This one next to us," the little man whispered eagerly to Trent, as he grasped his hand, "is the scale house where whatever is being done is done, number 3. In and out of the yawning gangways of the steamer before them, struggling lines of sweating men were wheeling trucks loaded with bales of tobacco. Trent looked first to the left, where bales disappeared into the tobacco warehouse, then to the right, where, close at hand, each truckload stopped momentarily on a scale platform in front of the low shed where bore the number Dickey indicated in a large white figure. "Who is that?" asked Trent, as a small figure, hardly 5 feet tall, cadaverous, beetle-browed, with cold, malignant, red-lidded eyes, passed directly under the arc light nearest them. "Rowan, the dock superintendent," Dickey whispered. "I knew you were small," Trent returned with surprise, "but I thought surely he must have some feast to be the terror of these dock labourers." "Wait!" Randland behind them motioned. A bloated, menacing figure had suddenly swung clear of the group of dock labourers. A roustabout goaded to desperation, with a fist raised against his puny superior. But before the blow had fallen, another fist, huge and black, struck the man over Rowan's shoulder with a hammer. He fell, and the dock superintendent passed on without a backward glance, the giant negro who had struck the blow following in his footsteps like a dog. "The black," Randland explained, "is Rowan's bodyguard. He needs him." "I see," Trent replied. "And for Miss Rowan's sake I am glad it was that way," he added enigmatically. Dickey had quietly opened the door on the opposite side of the shed. The three slipped quickly through it and stepped unobserved around the corner of the coffee warehouse to a long, dark, and narrow space. On one side of them was the rear wall of scale house number 3, and on the other the engine room where Lander's body had been found. The single window in the rear of number 3 scale house had been whitewashed to prevent anyone from looking in from that side, but in spots the whitewash had fallen off in flakes. Trent put his eye to one of these clear spots in the glass and looked in. The scale table, supported on heavy posts, extended across almost the whole front of the house, behind a low wide window, which permitted those seated at the table to see all that occurred on the docks. Toward the right end of the table sat the government weigher. Toward the left end, and separated from him by almost the whole length of the table, sat the company checker. They were the only persons in the scale house. Trent, after his first rapid survey of the scene, fixed his eye upon the man who had taken the place which Landers had held for 3 years, and Morse for a few days afterwards, the company checker. A truckload of tobacco bales was wheeled on to the scales in front of the house. "Watch his left knee," Trent whispered quickly into Dickey's ear at the pan beside him, as the balance was being made upon the beam before them. As he spoke, the government weigher adjusted the balance, and they saw the left leg of the company checker pressed hard against a post which protected the scale rod at his end. Both men in the scale house then read aloud the weight, and each entered it in the book on the table in front of him. A second truckful was wheeled onto the scale, and again, just as the government weigher fixed his balances, the company checker, so inconspicuously as to make the act undiscoverable by anyone not looking for that precise move, repeated the operation. With the next truck they saw it again. The psychologist turned to the others. Randland, too, had been watching through the pane, and nodded his satisfaction. Immediately Trent dashed upon the door of the scale house and threw himself bodily upon the checker. The man registered, they struggled. While the customs man protected him, Trent, wrenching something from the post beside the checker's left knee, rose with a cry of triumph. Then the psychologist, warned by a cry from Rentland, leaped quickly to one side to avoid a blow from the giant negro. His quickness saved him. Still the blow, glancing along his cheek, hurled him from his feet. He rose immediately, blood flowing from a superficial cut upon his forehead where it had struck the scale-house wall. He saw Rentland covering the negro with a revolver, and the two other customs men arresting, at pistol point, the malignant little dock superintendent, the checker, and the others who had crowded into the scale-house. You see, Trent exhibited to the customs officers a bit of barbed wire, wound with string, precisely like that the girl had given him that morning, and he had used in his test of welter the hour before. It was almost exactly as we knew it must be. The spring was struck through a hole in the protecting post so that it prevented the balance beam from rising properly when bales are put on the platform. A little pressure just at that point takes many pounds from each bale weighted. The checker had only to move his knee, in a way he would never have noticed if we were not watching for it, to work the scheme by which they have been cheating for 10 years. But the rest of this affair, he glanced at the quickly collecting crowd, can best be settled in the office. He led the way, the customs men taking their prisoners at pistol point. As they entered the office, Rowan first, a girl's cry, and the answering oath of her father told Trent that the dock superintendent's daughter had arrived. But she had been almost overtaken by another powerful car, for before Trent could speak with her, the outer door of the office opened violently, and President Welter, in an automobile coat and cap, entered. "Ah, Mr. Welter, you got here quickly," said Trent, meeting calmly his outraged astonishment at the scene, but a little too late. "What is the matter here?" Welter governed his voice commandingly. "And what has brought you here from your phrenology?" he demanded contemptuously of Trent. "The hope of catching red-handed, as we have just caught them, your company checker and your dock superintendent defrauding the government," Trent returned, before he could get here to stop them and remove evidences. "What raving idiocy is this?" Welter replied, still with excellent moderation. "I came here to sign some necessary papers for sheep's clearing, and you—" "I say we have caught your man red-handed," Trent repeated, "and the methods used, with your certain knowledge and under your direction, Mr. Welter, to steal systematically from the United States government for probably the last 10 years. We have uncovered the means by which your company checker at scale number 3, which, because of its position, probably weighs more cargoes than all the other scales together, has been lessening the apparent weights upon which you pay duties. Cheating here under my direction," Welter now bellowed indignantly. "What are you talking about? Rowan, what is he talking about?" he demanded, boldly of the dock superintendent, but the cadaverous little man was unable to brazen it out with him. "You need not have looked at your dock superintendent just then, Mr. Welter, to see if he'll stand the racket when the trouble comes, for which you have been paying him enough on the side to keep him in electric motors and marble statues. And you cannot try now to disown this crime with the regular precedent of corporation excuse, Mr. Welter, that you have never knew of it, that it was all done without your knowledge by a subordinate to make a showing in his department. And do not expect either to escape so easily your certain complicity in the murder of Landers, to prevent him from exposing your scheme, and, since even the American Commodities Company scarcely dared to have 2 accidental deaths of checkers in the same month, the shanghaiing of Morse later. My complicity in the death of Landers and the disappearance of Morse?" Welter roared. "I said the murder of Landers," Trent corrected. "For when Rentland and Dickey tell tomorrow before the grand jury how Landers was about to disclose to the Customs Department the secret of the cheating in weights, how he was made afraid by Rowan, and later